Because by the time you cut out the cable duct and everything, it doesn't really stick out that much. Right? Like even this bit here, for example, just cut that off. And that actually looks more natural. Being 2 blocks down like that. Well, this is fine, I guess. Alright, so I want glowstone, iron, gold, and dirt. Oh, and slabs. Let's get punching. That's a little strange. Maybe fill that into there at least. Then down there. At least this branch is mostly straight. Should make the wiring quite simple. Why? Why? It's gonna be a problem later on. Right. Yeah, it is. Let me add another layer. Like that. And I guess we need sponges. dug out too much. Alright, what's going on? There. Then there. Yeah, dug out too much. Right, and then that one. And so on. Alright, down again. Down there. Going back to earlier, it's not really earlier, but militaries. So in a lot of democracies, the military is like the whole hierarchy of it is obviously undemocratic. It is only the leadership, the top leadership of the military have to answer to the democratically elected government, right? So like civilian control of the military, I mean. Civilian control of the military, but aside from this like top level control, the rest of the military is a very strict hierarchy, which of course you have to be because of the nature of war, the nature of fighting wars. You can't really have people questioning their orders, because that's not how, you know, militaries work. I'm not sure where I'm going with this. So the military itself is undemocratic, but it has to obey the democratically elected governments. And this is fine, apparently. Or rather, this is the accepted way of doing things, right? Or consider bureaucracies, right? And so you elect your ministers, or alternatively you elect your senators and representatives. But let's say like the tax department, you don't elect each taxman or tax person, tax collector, or like, you know, the fire department, the police department. You don't elect every single police officer. So there are, you know, as a part of democratic governments, there are unelected bureaucrats, and that's not really a problem. We don't consider that to be a problem with democracy. It's just that You don't need an elected person involved in every little decision. You just need the elected person involved in the big decisions. But then the question is exactly which decisions should the people be involved in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and which decisions should the people not be involved in? Brexit, for example, is an interesting case study in democratic decision making, in the sense that it was probably not the best idea to ask the general public to make that decision. At least not at that time, given how little the people understood the full implications of Brexit. Right, like the Northern Ireland situation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which was never discussed, really, before the Brexit referendum. But after the Brexit referendum, it was discovered that that was like one of the biggest problems with the whole thing. One of the biggest sticking points. So basically the people like aren't gonna realize what the problem is, because the people aren't smarter than the politicians necessarily. So the question, the bigger question is, what should be democratic? And when should those things be democratic? And possibly also, how should they be democratic? And you know, nothing's for granted. We can reassess everything. Everything's on the table. For example, should people... Oh crap, I punched a rabbit. Should people elect their ministers and representatives? Or should the government be a bureaucracy that is obligated by law to do what the people tell them to? But the bureaucracy is not elected. It's a system of unelected experts. Which you might say, wow, that's not democracy. But consider again, like the military, for example. The military is an unelected hierarchy of experts in waging war. And they are obligated by law to do what the civilian government tells them to do, but only at a high level, right? The civilian government don't tell them how to wage every single war. Like, they don't get involved in the minutiae of military business. But the military on a high level have to do what the civilian government says. So how is that like acceptable when it's only slightly different from, let's say, having an unelected government that is legally obligated to do what voters tell them to? like instead of voting for your ministers, you vote for the policies, and the ministers are unelected, but they're obligated to carry out those policies. That's not so different from the military, right? From how in a democratic society we deal with military matters, or even things like tax matters, or you know, the health system or the police system or the stuff like that. You don't. You know, like the police chief and the justice system, they have to enforce the laws you make. They don't make the laws, they enforce them, right? So like, how is it you trust unelected judges to enforce your laws, but you can't, you know, trust an unelected set of lawmakers to make the laws that they're told to make in like a broad brush sort of way. Like the people vote for a broad brush policy, and then the bureaucrats have to figure out the details. How's that less democratic? It's not, right? It's different. I wouldn't say it's less democratic. But once you start reconsidering what democracy is, when should things be democratic, you really have to reconsider everything about your society. That's a whole can of worms. But maybe it's time to do that now. Given Brexit, given Trump, given the rise of China, not a lot of people realize it, but China really is something completely different. From what the West is used to dealing with. And to an extent, the West doesn't quite understand what they're dealing with yet. Like they do, but they don't. They see it from their perspective, but that's an outsider's perspective. They're not really gonna understand it fully until they can see it from the inside as well. And you can't really deal with something you don't understand. Not effectively. A lot of like assumptions. Not entirely based in reality. How far are we? We're quite far, we're only halfway there. Alright, I'm gonna stop punching now, come back next time, next week. I continue punching this dirt out and then building this branch. I think I should be able to finish branch 4-4 next week, and then after that I might take 2 weeks to do branch 4-5, and then it will be all wired up, the whole network, all 25. Alright, looking forward to that. See you next time.